Hello, and welcome back to our read-through of the entire Bible in 2026. We are getting into the first week of February, and we're going to be reading this week from Leviticus 11 to Numbers chapter 6. Now, these chapters, this section of the Bible, it is really a slog to read. There's not much action going on. There's a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot of repetitions. And Leviticus and the early chapters of Numbers are some of the hardest books of the Bible to read through. And so hopefully, as we do go through this together, I will help you understand that what God is saying here and why it's important. Now we're picking up in Leviticus chapter 11, and God starts talking to the people of Israel about all the things that they are and are not allowed to eat, the kosher food laws. And some of these are pretty famous, like they're not allowed to have pork, they're not allowed to eat shellfish. The animals that they're supposed to eat apparently become basically just the grazing, herbivorous animals. And maybe there's something there. I mean, even today we consider grass-fed beef to be higher quality than other beef. And there's a lot there that you can look into. The animals that are forbidden are the ones that are either carnivorous and toxins build up in animal proteins the higher up in the food chain they are, or they're the ones that are maybe unsafe to eat if not fully cooked, like pork, if it's undercooked, will kill you. Or it's even animals that, like shellfish, that people tend to get allergic to. So I think there's several reasons why God forbids the animals here, but mostly what he is doing is he's trying to set apart the people of Israel from the nations around them as holy. He's calling them to be a holy people. And this continues with the other rules and laws that we see in Leviticus, and it talks a lot about being pure, being purified before you come and worship God. And it gets into what makes people clean versus unclean. And are there some things that are conditions that lead to you being unclean that are not easily cleansed? And so you get into rules about leprosy, which is skin conditions, skin diseases, and a lot of them are infectious. And so God says if you get a skin condition, you're supposed to isolate yourself. And once that goes away, then you wash and you're cleansed and you can come back and worship God. A lot of this section is about cleansing yourself, setting yourself apart, becoming holy before you go to worship God in the tabernacle. Then it shifts in about chapter 16, and God starts talking about the holiest celebration that they're going to have, the Day of Atonement, where the priests go in and they cleanse the temple itself once a year of the sins and impurities that have kind of been building up as people have worshiped in the tabernacle throughout the year. And this Day of Atonement, it sits here right in the middle of Leviticus, which is right in the middle of the first 5 books of the Bible, which make up the Torah. And so a lot of people will say this is perhaps one of the most important parts of the Torah, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, the 5 books of Moses. It is looking at the Day of Atonement. And in here, one of those rituals that is done is that 2 goats are brought before the high priest. One is chosen by lots to be sacrificed, and its blood cleanses the sin that is building up in the temple. And the other goat is set free into the wilderness, carrying the sins of the people away with it. If this sounds a little bit like the trial of Jesus, where he dies for the sins of mankind, and Barabbas, the sinful person who was supposed to be crucified, gets to go free, well, that's probably by design. Now this continues on, and God starts talking about how different sacrifices are to be done again. And again, he's calling the people to live holy lives. And then we get, as we go a little bit further, as we start talking about how to be holy and stuff that is right and wrong to do, how to take care of others, you get to the point of like how the priests are supposed to be even holier than the rest of the people. you get into a section where God describes the festivals of the Lord, the feasts from Sabbath and Passover, the Feast of First Fruits, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, again, the Feast of Booths, and all how these various feasts that happen throughout the year, all of them end up pointing to Jesus in one way or another. Now, eventually, we get to the end of Leviticus and start into the book of Numbers. And the first thing they do is they number all the people. And then once they number all the people and all the tribes, they organize how the tribes are to camp around the tabernacle as they get ready to leave Mount Sinai, and they arrange for the priests, the different Levites, what their roles are going to be when carrying the tabernacle and all of its implements from place to place as they prepare to leave Mount Sinai and head towards the promised land. Now, the last thing they talk about this week is in Numbers chapter 6, and they detail this Nazirite vow. It is a vow that anyone can take to set themselves apart as holy to the Lord, whether for just a short amount of time, or what ends up happening is we see several people who are born as Nazirites and live that way their entire life. They're not allowed to cut their hair. They're not allowed to drink wine, and they're not allowed to touch dead carcasses. And as they do that, they're trying to focus on giving themselves, devoting themselves to God, so that He can use them to do many different things. And we will see very many famous Nazirites as we continue reading in future weeks.